Hey guys, this is Kyle,
Yeah, this is Brandon.
and we are Your Gaijin Friends.
So I think we should do a little quick intro of what this is, maybe. We're going to be speaking mainly English, but a little bit of Japanese. So if you want to get to know some English culture and English at the same time and not be totally lost because you are not super confident yet, then you come to the right place. Okay, so earlier this week I put out a request on Instagram, my personal Instagram, and got a few responses for some questions. And we're going to start with one I got from Phil, who is actually here in Vancouver.
Phil?
Yeah. And he is Canadian. And his first question is, how long is our podcast going to be?
Okay. So, why don't you tell me the answer, Brandon?
Our plan is to make podcasts that are about 20 minutes to 25 minutes. Hopefully you can enjoy them on your way to work or school.
Or at home?
Or at home.
Also fine. Yeah.
Just kicking back on the couch, having a cup of tea.
Cup of tea.
I have one other question we're going to start with for all the beginners. So I got a question from one girl here in Vancouver named Kirara, and she asked, 3ドル30セントは英語ってなんて言いますか?
That's a good question.
So,
How
Kyle,
do you
what
say
do you
it, Brandon? What do I think? Is it $3.30?
No. Good try, though.
Oh, damn. How about $30.30?
It's a good try, but we don't actually talk about the point. The first part, if we're going to talk about dollars, we talk about dollars and cents, so $3.30.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or we could just skip them both and say 3.30.
Sounds good.
So a full sentence or super casual, it's up to you.
All right. Any other questions?
We have a few more questions, but I think we're going to get to those in the end segment where the advanced speakers can come enjoy a nice chit chat and back and forth between the two of us.
All right. So moving on to the next segment, are we?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So this next segment is called Observations. So this is where we will talk about observations that we have, things we notice about friends or students learning English, common mistakes, or just things that we think are interesting. All right. So I guess I'll get us started today. So
Sure.
The first observation I have is a very common thing I see where students will, for example, say, I am boring.
I've heard that a few times.
Yeah. And it's a very common mistake, and it becomes very funny for the people listening, because if you say, I am boring, it's basically saying, つまらない人です. So
Yeah.
talking about yourself being boring. And what you want to say is, I am bored. Yeah. 今暇 or 退屈してる, things like that. Also kind of works for one thing I often hear is, I am scary.
Yeah.
What does that mean, Brandon?
That's something I hear often, and sometimes it's true.
Yikes.
I am scary. Kawaii hito desu. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. So what should you say instead of scary?
I'm scared. Sounds like it might be a good option.
Might be a good option. I'm scared of.
You could actually say that is scary or this is scary.
Also true. Yeah. So Brandon, what are you scared of?
I am scared of.
Other than commitment.
Other than commitment, that's a good question. You put me on the spot here.
Uh-huh.
I am scared of my cheese going moldy before I eat all of it.
Okay, that's reasonable.
How about you? Do you have any fears?
No.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if I had to say, if I had a gun to my head I would say I am scared of guns.
Scared of guns. Actually, I guess I'm scared of heights. I do my best to overcome that fear. I do enjoy roller coasters. I don't mind flying. I've done cliff jumping, but
I don't think you're afraid of heights.
when I'm standing up top there, it's hard to even think.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I don't know. The adrenaline rush is interesting.
Sure, sure. I mean, I used to be afraid of heights when I was a kid. I was like, I would go up to the CN Tower. Have you been to the CN Tower?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, in Toronto, and going up on the observation deck with a glass floor. I
Yeah,
remember
that is
freaking me out like
me too.
crazy.
I went there about 4 years ago, and looking through the glass floor, it was scary. Really, really scary. I'm pretty sure I'm safe, but doesn't change anything.
No, it's still scary. But I mean, these days, I'm okay with heights, especially in a plane. Like in planes, I know that the risk or the chance of it crashing are so small that
That's true, yeah.
I know it's safe. But when I'm in cars, I know that also car accidents are way more common.
That's true.
And I am kind of scared being in cars because I had some bad like experiences when I was younger of getting a car hit from behind. Yeah. So Brandon, do you have any observations today?
Yeah, mine's not an observation of Japanese speakers, but actually an observation of myself when I was speaking Japanese.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are worried about making mistakes, and it makes it tough to actually use the language because it's embarrassing if you make a mistake. So I have a story of my own personal mistake that I thought was funny and was very embarrassing when I made it.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
You might have heard it before, but I'll tell you again.
All right.
One of the first times I was in Japan, I went to a coffee shop and I was so excited to use my new Japanese that I just learned. And I was looking at the menu. It took me a while to read because, as you know, coffee shops, almost everything is katakana.
Sure.
But they had one option on the menu, the first option up top, and it said Nihon Kohi. And I thought, wow, that's cool. I'm in Japan. I want to drink some Japanese coffee. So I tried ordering Nihon Kohi Kudasai maybe 3 or 4 times. And the girl that was working there gave me like the weirdest look, the smile and the head tilt.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, and like, eh? And finally I kind of gave up and I pointed up at the sign behind her and she turned around and she was like, honjitsu kohi. So so of course I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want, but I have no idea what honjitsu means. So I ordered it, I got it, sat down, took a sip, tastes like regular coffee. I spent a while trying to figure out how to write honjitsu in my dictionary, and finally figured out that that's just the daily blend. Like, okay, well,
today's coffee.
Today's coffee, yeah. Yeah, so that was super embarrassing because she made me say it over and over and over until I pointed at the sign.
Nihon coffee.
Yeah, I thought I was saying it wrong. Like, Nihon. I don't know how to say that differently. So, Nihon coffee. I don't know.
That's
yeah,
good.
that was.
I never heard that before. That's good.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does sound embarrassing too.
Oh, super embarrassing. So anyway, if you're studying English, you can be embarrassed. It's okay. And those embarrassing stories, make note of them because they turn into pretty funny stories later on.
Exactly. And now you'll never forget honjitsu.
Since that day, honjitsu has been stuck in my mind forever. That was a great learning experience. And now my Japanese is much better, but yeah, I still remember that. I still remember which cafe. She probably doesn't work there anymore. That was a while ago, but
yeah, I'm sure she's forgotten about it. But I'm sure
there's
lots of stupid gaijin who try to order
Nihon coffee. Yeah,
I think so. All right. Well, should we move along to Honjitsu's TV special?
Honjitsu's TV special. Okay, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's hard to say. All right.
Sure. So each time we meet here, we're going to be talking about a TV show or a movie.
Okay.
Today we've decided to talk about one of the newest episodes of Terrace House Tokyo, episode 32. I believe it's called I Hate You.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, for anyone who has not seen the new season of Terrace House, feel free to skip ahead. We'll put the times in the description if you want to skip, because there will be spoilers. So this is the spoiler alert for you.
All right.
Netabare-chui.
Oh, that's that Japanese for spoiler alert?
It is.
That's cool. I'm learning something new every day.
Yeah. All right. So,
First, I'm curious about your opinion of the episode as a whole.
as a whole,
Yeah, did you like it?
yeah. I mean, I'm generally never disappointed. I always appreciate the problems of other people.
Okay.
It's interesting to think about it, the various problems they're having, and you know. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was good. There's some parts, of course, I don't agree with, but that's everybody's opinion, and that's why we watch Terrace House, and that's why we're here today talking about it. But as a whole, it was an interesting episode. A lot of things happen.
Right. One thing I would like to tell the people listening is that apparently Brandon never watches the commentary segments in Terrace House. Did you watch the commentary for this episode?
That is a really good question because you are absolutely correct. I hate watching the commentary. Recently, I have given it a chance and I've tried watching it. So half the time I skip and half the time I don't. This episode particularly made me want to skip the commentary once again. And
Why? I don't understand.
so I feel like everybody has like a trope that they play, a character that they play, and they have to say what they have to say. Like, there's the good person, the bad person, the person who's on everybody's side, and that's not for me. I have my opinion.
I don't know if it's a trope. I mean, I would think maybe it's just that's who they are. It's their character, so naturally, that's what's going to come out of their mouth. But I would say that like today I watched the episode with English subtitles on.
Yeah.
Normally I never see it with English subtitles, just the Japanese.
Right.
And what they're saying is much less interesting and much less poignant, or less. It doesn't sound as good in English.
Yeah. The thing that kind of bothers me, I guess, is the digs that they take for. I feel like because they feel like they should be digging, like they're like looking for something bad to talk about, even when there isn't something bad. And I don't know if there's something bad, sure, talk about it, but there's no reason to go.
You mean they're
searching.
kind of like exaggerating?
Kind of, not everybody,
Sure,
but
sure.
some people. Like you is the character I like the most out of the people that sit there and chat.
You
She
like me?
always seemed. Yeah, I like you.
Who's
No,
you?
no.
Who's you?
You is what's her name? Her mom.
Oh, that girl, Yu-san. I see.
Yusan,
Okay.
yeah. So she seems like she's kind of always like back and forth between the good and the bad, and she's on everybody's side. And sometimes she says things I don't agree with, but at least she's all over.
She seems pretty chill, I think.
Yeah.
She's kind of more like international minded out of the group, I feel.
Seems like, yeah.
Reasonable.
Reasonable. I feel like I agree with her more often. Not agree. I can value her opinion more often than the others. And actually, I really like Tokui-san, but he seems to be gone for reasons we aren't going to discuss today.
Is he actually gone?
So I'm sure you heard about the news.
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know if we should discuss it on this podcast. It's kind of a long discussion, but I did like his random ideas and crazy things that he thinks about, but yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about that later. Interesting.
Yeah.
Anywho, so I have some questions for you about things that happened in the episode.
Sure, let's do it.
So I was wondering, how how you feel about Ryo, the basketball player. He told one of the girls he has no feelings for any of them, and he's always speaking very ambiguously, kind of beating around the bush, never really saying exactly what he feels. So, what do you think of the way he is dealing with that situation?
Um, I think in his position, he's kind of the coach of like the national team, right?
Captain.
So oh yeah, sorry, not the coach, the captain. So he does have a lot of pressure, I'm sure, from his coach
Sure.
and all the people that are sponsoring him to
Hmm.
look good.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that's not what he wants, but that is something to consider because if he looks bad, he might be pulled as the captain. So he's got to think about his future. And he did say basketball is everything to him.
Hmm.
I don't agree with everything that he's done for sure, but in general, I think he did a pretty good job of not causing too much trouble. I understand about Hana.
Hmm.
Hana definitely was interested in him, and he's fully aware that she's interested in him, but he
Hmm.
does mention that she never said anything, and that does pose a really difficult question. Should you bring it up or not?
Right. Yeah, that's true. Like I think it's not necessarily his responsibility to bring it up, even though she's making it obvious. But I don't know. I I I understand trying to preserve
The
the
image?
image
Yeah.
of like for his basketball team. But um I mean if you don't want to make your team look bad or like cause problems for that, why did you come to the house where you're
Yeah, I agree.
on display for everybody to see and who you're supposed to be yourself and
I feel like at the beginning he said that he wants to get onto the Olympic team, right? So
Mhm.
I'm sure, like as the girls talked about, I'm sure one part of it is self-promotion. I don't think that's the only part,
Mm.
but definitely
By
one
me.
part of it is, yeah, try to get him into the limelight and show that he's there and he can do what he can do. And going back to Hana and how he could have dealt with it, maybe if he had told her he's a little bit more interested in Vivi, would have at least given her some information without actually having to say, I know you like me and I don't like you or something like that.
Okay, so he could have used
So
that as a way to indicate that he's not into her.
yeah, maybe. I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but
But I guess even then, like he didn't even want to say he was into Vivi
true. I know,
because
which puts him kind of stuck between a rock, eh?
uh-huh. So it's funny because he seemed to be like the character that everyone loved for a long time, and now suddenly he's like the bad guy.
I never felt like he was the person everybody loved. At least I didn't love him the whole time. And
Oh,
at the
really?
end, I don't feel like he was a bad guy either.
Uh-huh.
So I think that they got a little bit emotional and they branded him as the bad guy in that kind of like emotional state.
Hmm.
But it seems like Hana kind of forgave him like two scenes later. Vivi was still a little bit upset, but she ended up kissing him at the end. So
That was that was steamy.
yeah, and we should get back to that after. But never really was super into him. Yeah, he always seemed kind of flippant, and he's almost never there, so it's hard to start to like him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a lot of the characters seem to be gone for like a week or something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what about that steamy kiss? You wanted to get back to it?
Yes, definitely. So that is something that I have never seen. Talking about Japanese culture versus more Western culture.
Hmm.
So that did not surprise me, but I'm sure it surprised a lot of viewers in Japan.
Like, oh my
What do you
God,
think?
what do they do?
Yeah. So it's good to remember that Ryo also he was in California, I believe. He went to university
Somewhere in
there,
America. Yeah.
somewhere in America, yeah. So he understands Western culture. She's not from America, but she's also spent a lot of time there and she's kind of like a Western culture, right?
Right, right.
So that kind of like goodbye kiss is not super surprising.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that her plan was to try to get him to change his mind temporarily. love, lust,
Mm-hmm.
see what she can do. It didn't work out, but she got her kiss, and maybe he got his.
Yeah, I think he got his. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think I don't know. I was surprised just because it's like on a Japanese show, and recently I'm used to not seeing anything like that.
True.
Like often whatever you see is just like barely touching lips or something.
If anything, yeah, holding
Yeah,
hands
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. And then even holding hands, it's like, whoa, look at that.
True. Yeah, I guess I
Yeah.
watch a little more Western TV being here,
Hmm.
but
A little more adult.
adult, yeah, it's just a different culture. But yeah, I can understand both of them kind of getting caught up in the moment. They're laying together and talking about how they like each other, but it's not possible, and blah blah blah. So
That brings me to something else.
yeah,
So the whole time it seems that Leo was at least somewhat interested in Vivi,
right.
but he kind of katteni, like on his own, he decided that he didn't want to start anything because he wants her to follow her dream.
Yeah.
And he just completely put a stop to that
Hmm.
without even bringing it up to her and having it be a discussion. So, what do you think about that? That was something that I felt was kind of like a dirty move. Kind of was just like not even giving her the option to discuss it.
Yeah, I agree. So that is definitely a typical kind of excuse cop out to not get into a relationship. But
Hmm.
at the same time, he might be totally honest about it. I don't know. I don't know him. But she did say that, and he
Hmm.
does have his own goals. So
But I mean, he,
I
he he didn't even let her know that was what was on
true.
his mind.
So playing devil's advocate on this side, um, I think that's kind of a typical excuse, kind of cop out to try to not get into a relationship by saying something like that. But at the same time, they are not in a relationship, so I don't think he has the responsibility to, like, the necessity to discuss that with her. If he
Hmm.
doesn't want to do it and he doesn't want to get into it, I can understand.
Hmm.
I if it was me, I don't think I would do the same thing. It'd be better to talk about it, especially if he is interested in her, because yeah, if he's interested in her, then why not talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he knows she's interested in him
Right.
the whole time, and he kind of leads her on, right?
True.
By like spending a lot of time together and like close proximity, kind of being close together. So I feel that's why he kind of should have mentioned his thought process a little bit even,
Yeah, that's true.
or
Um,
just not like spend such intimate time together.
yeah. So I know you've been away from Canada for a while, but our dating culture is very different here, right?
Oh, is it?
So, yeah, so
There you
our
go.
dating culture is very different than the Japanese dating culture. So, how close they were, I feel, is kind of a middle point between the Japanese dating culture and the Western style dating
Mm.
culture, where they're close, but there is no connection yet.
Hmm.
And so often our dating culture is much closer than that, and they
Right.
share a lot more intimate talks
I see. I
than they
see.
did there. And it's also very possible they're talking off screen.
Sure. Sure.
So, like at Terrace House, they only record sometimes, so we don't really know what's happening off screen.
Right. Right. Yeah, I guess that's a good point as well. Yeah, I guess since it's a Japanese show, but a lot of the people are international,
Right.
then it's like whose rules do you play by? Then
I
it's
think so. Like
an
he's
interesting thing.
Japanese, but he has experience in the Western culture. She's
Hmm.
Western, but she has experience with Japanese culture.
Hmm.
So I feel like they found kind of a happy medium, but it wasn't happy at all in the end.
Not at all. All right. Okay. So how about we move on to a different part of the episode? What really stood out for me was Emika. She really
Yeah.
got ripped apart by the. She got really, really criticized by the commentators, and she
Yeah.
watched the episode.
Mhm.
And I mean, I do understand what you meant when you're saying that commentators are like vicious, like overly
Yeah.
vicious, but she should understand it's TV, so that's what they have to do to, and she should like expect that a little bit. But I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
I understand. Like, again, negative opinions are totally fine. If I was sitting there on the panel and I was discussing, I would definitely have negative opinions once in a while too. They are aware that the people watching the show are probably going to see it in the future, but that's their job. The people
Mhm.
on the show, it's also their job to be normal. Uh, Actually, if you ask me, if I was directing the show, which I'm not, but if I was, I think not watching the episodes would make more sense. So I don't really agree with the idea of seeing what's happening like 2 or 3 weeks earlier. It's kind of strange.
Oh,
It's kind of impossible.
do you mean the people in the house shouldn't be
Yeah,
allowed to watch it?
I think so. With the, like with social media, it's impossible, I know, but it's such a
Mm.
weird dynamic to add to the show to know what's happening or what happened from other people's points of views
But I mean,
from
how
weeks
can you
before.
prevent that? They're living
Yeah.
in the real
Yeah,
world where people are
true.
seeing this, and yeah,
They'll
through
get
social
messages
media, or
from,
even their friends will be
yeah,
like, "Whoa."
what happened. Yeah, that's true. So I'm sure she understands and she's fully aware going on to the show, and she's must have watched episodes before, and they've been very, very negative towards her. Not everybody, but they
Mhm.
seem to kind of jumped on the negative Emika boat.
Yeah, they do
And
seem a little harsh on her for some
yeah,
reason. I don't know exactly why, but
I think so. She seems like a pretty like genuine person. I
yeah, I
don't
think
know.
she's maybe just kind of misunderstood.
Yeah.
People just assume she's doing everything intentionally when maybe she's not trying to. But
Yeah, I feel really bad for her. And so I told you that I gave the comments a chance again, and that
Mhm.
was the part where I was like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to watch
Screw
these
these guys.
anymore. Yeah, says I almost feel like I'm wasting my time
Mm,
because most of the opinions it's hard to value. I don't need
mhm.
to agree with them, but if I don't value them, I'm just wasting time. So I might as
Sure.
well watch the episode in 30 minutes.
There you go. I mean, I personally will continue to watch the commentary because, I mean, first of all, I watch it as a way of studying Japanese, and that is actually helpful for me because they use a lot of different expressions that I'd never heard anywhere
They
before.
do,
So,
yes.
that's cool for me. But yeah, you don't have to always agree with everything they said.
True. And I think
Having said that, okay, go ahead.
going forward, you watching the commentary and me possibly not watching the commentary might be interesting to talk about.
Could be interesting. Yeah. Related to that, do you think you would ever go on a show like Terrace House?
That would be fantastic. I think it would be tons of fun.
Yeah.
I've lived in a share house before.
Mhm.
My current living situation, I'm usually living with a roommate as well. It's not the same kind of situation. It's just two of us usually, but living with other people is so interesting. You make the most interesting bonds with
Mhm.
people and people you've never met before from different walks of life that you would never actually interact with in other situations. So I think it'd be tons of fun.
Mhm. Mhm. Even though you might get ripped apart, really criticized by the commentators, that wouldn't bother
Um,
you.
I would definitely be bothered by it, and I'm sure I would be ripped apart because I make some terrible decisions in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the show, and I would be ready to accept that.
Uh-huh. Take the good with the bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
How about you? Would you be interested in being on the show if you had a different living situation?
Yeah, in an alternate reality,
Yeah,
I think I would. Yeah, it would be interesting, even to get a look at how people see you.
that's true. Yeah,
Because in like everyday life, you don't really get a full view of how what people think of you, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, or they don't
sure.
want to make waves, you know.
Mm,
But the people on TV, they don't care, and they'll show you how you're actually coming off, or
true.
so that would be
Even just
interesting.
even without the opinions, watching yourself, like I don't see myself recorded candidly very often, and very often I mean never.
Uh-huh.
So it would be kind of interesting to see how you interact with people. Terrace House isn't totally candid. You're aware that the cameramen are there and they're walking around and doing stuff, but I'm sure after a couple hours, you kind of get used to them sitting there on the floor, like with their cameras pointed at you.
Are they
It'd be
sitting in the
interesting.
house, or is it just cameras in the walls?
Oh no, so the camera crew comes by every once in a while and it's
Oh, really?
scheduled. Yeah, that's why all the important talks happen when the cameras are there.
Huh. I thought it was like
So
a
no,
different
it's not that at
situation.
all.
I thought it was like real world or something, where it's just
No,
always happening.
even if you watch the camera shots, how the cameras move around, it's very obvious that it's a person holding the camera. If you watch
Mhm.
reality TV, North American reality TV, it's very stationary. The cameras don't
Mhm.
move.
Right.
But yeah, they get some really nice, beautiful shots in Terrace House. So
Mm.
it's not staged and it's not scripted, but there have been not chances. There have been situations in the past where people are kind of called out for staging things. And the only
Right,
reason they
right,
can stage it is because the camera crews are not always there.
right. They know when they're not there.
They know when they're not there, yeah.
I see, I see. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know about the frequency of how often they're there, but they're
Mhm.
not always there.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Well, why don't we move on to our next Q&A segment?
All right, so I have two questions here. The first one is from one of my students, Azusa, and she asked how to study for the TOEIC test. Do you
Okay.
have any tips?
How to study for the TOEIC test. The one thing I would use the TOEIC kind of practice tests, and because I mean that's basically what the test is going to be. So just getting used to it, because you're not only being tested on your English ability, you're being tested on how you can take the test. Particularly TOEIC is majority trick questions, hikake So a lot of the answers are almost right, or they
Yeah.
would be right if something else was a little different. But you really have to be careful because they're trying to trick you. So just getting used to that, used to all the common tricks that they do use, uh, is a good idea. And I mean, studying those words, having those kinds of discussions, if you can, just to get familiar with those things, would be a good idea for me. What do you think?
Um, so yeah, I totally agree with you for the actual test itself. Another big part of the TOEIC test is the vocabulary,
Mhm.
and there's so many TOEIC vocabulary books, and they're all great. If you have one, you can use it. I'm sure that's fantastic. But how you study for the vocabulary, how you study the vocabulary itself, I think needs some small improvement for most people. So most people have the red and black pages and they have the red sheet that goes over it and you can't see the English side or the Japanese side. But what I would really recommend is buying some flashcards
Mhm.
and copying all the words onto flashcards. And when you're studying, the ones that are easy set off to the side and the ones that are difficult study again. And I really would recommend using three different piles. It's kind of difficult to explain on here, but I'll link a description of what I mean in the description of the podcast here. But yeah, there's definitely a good and a bad way of studying with flashcards, and I can recommend a good one.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, so moving on to another thing, it was a question and not a question at the same time.
Mhm.
So my Japanese is not as good as Kyle's, so I'm going to get him to read the name of the tissue that I recently stumbled upon. Do you remember what it is?
Oh, let me take a look here. Yeah, it says Zeitaku Hoon.
Okay, so this tissue, I was out with a friend, and she told me, I said, this tissue is very soft.
Mhm.
And she said, yes, it's also very sweet. And so that confused me because actually she said it in Japanese and I thought I might be misunderstanding. She was like, "Oh, like amai." Also, what did she say? I forget what she said, but it's also sweet. Amai.
Oh, so was
And I
she
was
was
like, "Eh,
she
sweet? Like aji takiri?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What? Do you eat tissue?" And
does she?
So she told me 80% of Japanese people would say that that tissue is sweet. And that kind of threw me for a loop because over
I'm
here,
confused.
we do not eat tissue. The
Uh-huh.
tissue is not something that generally goes into your
I mean,
mouth.
very few people eat tissue.
As
Very
in
small
0.
percentage. No, there's a small percentage where they end up
Okay,
eating
alright.
objects and stuff.
Alright, so minus people that eat objects.
Yes.
That was a bold statement. 80% of Japanese people would agree that this tissue is sweet. So I'll link a picture of what this tissue is, but I was
You did a survey?
I was astounded. And so, of course, I took a picture and I posted on my Instagram immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And there was about 60 people that responded.
Wow, that's pretty
And
good. Mr. Popular.
yeah, I know, eh? Usually I get like 1, but I guess this tissue thing was interesting. So the percentage, I told her if it was more than 80%, I would eat a piece of tissue. So thank you everybody on my Instagram for voting no, that's not sweet, because I really appreciate that. It did hover around 80% for a long time, but it eventually ended at 72%,
Wow.
which is very high. So still
How
72% of people think that the tissue is sweet.
However, I saw this on your Instagram and I
Yeah.
answered, and I
Yeah.
had no idea what the hell you were talking about.
Okay, what did you choose?
So I think I put amai.
You are a bastard.
I don't know what the question is. It just said amai, amakunai,
I
basically.
see. The majority of people that answered were Japanese.
Okay.
So I don't
I'm
have
sorry.
the statistics. I'll
I'm
pull
not
up the
that
statistics.
good at Japanese, Brandon.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, if you have a chance, maybe grab a piece of the tissue and stuff it in your mouth and see if you agree. I have not tried it yet. Well, that's not true. No, she did make me have a little taste, and it's kind of sweet, I guess.
But
I did not eat any, but
the real question
yes.
is, was it luxurious and did it retain the heat?
I don't know about the heat part, but it was incredibly luxurious. It's so soft. That is
Really?
the softest tissue ever, yeah. My grandma used to take tissue and crumple it up in her hands to make it softer. This tissue is the softest tissue you've ever felt.
Wow. Are they our sponsor today, Brandon?
They are not, but if they're interested in sponsoring us, we are open. Send us an email at info@yourgaijinfriends.com.
All right, sounds good. All right,
But,
so speaking of sponsors, if you would like to sponsor us and just give us a little bit of money every month, feel free to pop your way onto Patreon and find us on Patreon, because if you would like to support us with a little bit of money every month, we will give you some extra bonus materials to help you study and even ask us extra questions, whatever.
Right, so we are going to be doing a question and answer period on each episode. So you can head on over to our Instagram page and send us some questions, or email us again at info@yourgaijinfriends.com, and we'll see if we can answer your question on the next episode.
All right, so over and out.
That's a terrible ending. All right, we'll see you on the flip side.
See you on the flip side.